The goal of Data Transformers podcast is to accelerate digital transformation by bridging the gap between business outcomes and rapidly advancing technologies. And we aim to bridge this gap by focusing on data. I am Peggy Tsai, top 50 women in tech influencer, co-author of the AI book, and data governance expert.
I'm Ramesh Danta, an entrepreneur, a tech blogger, and AI enthusiast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the current episode of Data Transformers podcast. And today, Peggy and I are excited to introduce an industry thought leader, consultant, advisor, author, speaker, instructor on data and analytics strategy. And I'm a big fan of Doug Laney. Doug is the Data and Analytics Innovation Fellow at West Monroe. He's the author of Infonomics. Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ramesh. Hi, Peggy.
Welcome, Doug. So, Doug, I thought we would start out first with talking about your best-selling book, Infonomics. I think you really coined this term, and in the industry, love to hear more about how you came about to writing and to actually thinking about the concepts for this book.
Yeah, so I think the book was inside me for a while, and the backdrop on it was the concept of Infonomics actually starts with a pretty very sad chapter in U.S. and global history, and that's the 9/11 terror attacks. So I talk about that in the book, and how while I was an analyst with Gartner, the IT research and advisory firm, some clients started contacting us after 9/11 who had been in the Twin Towers, who had lost their data. Remember, this is 2001. It's before a lot of companies had cloud, had their data in the cloud or had offsite backups. So these companies actually lost their data, right? They didn't know who their customers were. They had lost their transaction data, their contracts, employee records, all of that. And so it became very much an existential event for the businesses. So naturally, who do you call when you suffer some kind of loss? Is you call your insurance company and submit a claim. Well, the insurance company said, well, sorry, we don't believe that data constitutes property. Therefore, we're not going to honor or recognize your payout on your claims for the value of the data you lost or the impact on the business. And that came as a great surprise. To me, I'd always thought about data as an asset, data as property, and I never really gave it much of a second thought. And then what the insurance companies did, the insurance standards body, about a month after 9/11, they updated the commercial general liability policy standard template, which is used by all insurance companies to explicitly exclude data from P&C policies, to add further insult to injury. And then the accounting profession followed suit a couple of years later and updated a key financial standard to prohibit the capitalization of data on balance sheets or the recognition of data. Wow. So even if you wanted to record the value of your company's data on your balance sheet, you now no longer can. So kind of all this got my attention and got me a little bit riled up. And I said, well, how are companies supposed to become more data-driven and data-centric and participate in the information age, right? And if data is not considered an asset or even considered a property. And so that took me down the path of thinking about, well, maybe we should just kind of forget about what the accountants and the insurance companies say about data's being value or property. And I think it's really just incumbent upon organizations to actually treat data as an asset, irrespective of its official designation, not as an asset, right? And so that kind of led me down the road of thinking about how to manage and monetize and measure data as an actual asset.
So Doug, so that begs the question, in your book, there are 3 areas that you mentioned. By the way, I have the book right here. And then I cherish your handwritten note to me as well. So I have it on the video as well.
There it is.
Thank you very much. So you talked about monetizing, managing, and measuring information.
Right.
In a conventional way, I would have thought people would look at, first, I need to measure the information. Mm-hmm. Then I need to manage my information. Then I will think about monetizing.
It's a great point.
Book starts right off monetizing the information, managing and measuring.
So, this is why you have book reviewers. So I had my whole, a lot of people at Gartner reviewing the book, and they said, you know what? the stories, it's always good to start with the end in mind. What do you want to achieve? And what companies want to achieve is to generate more value from their data, right? Or use data in innovative and high value ways. And so we decided to, I'd actually written the book in that order that you mentioned, but we revised it to put the monetization up front, to the inspirational stories about how organizations are using data, and then talk through that kind of process of thinking about how to generate new ideas and how to implement them. But yeah, you're right. I think conceptually it really starts with measuring data, because there's the old adage that you can't manage what you don't measure, right? And I think one of my hypothesis has been that companies don't really manage their data particularly well, certainly compared to the way they manage their other assets, like their financial assets or their physical assets or even their human capital, because it's just not something that's measured. And I think it follows that any asset that you're not managing well, or as well as you can, is one that you can't generate economic benefits from as well as you should be able to. So yeah, for a lot of companies, this is kind of a vicious cycle of not measuring, therefore not managing, therefore not monetizing their data as well as they could or should. And so yes, I think it should start with measuring, understanding the quality attributes of data, data's impact on business processes, even data's cost basis, its market value, its impact on revenue streams and expense savings. These are all things that companies should be measuring about their data. I was just on a call with an insurance company the last hour, and they are having trouble prioritizing. They have thousands of data sources that they deal with, and they're having difficulty prioritizing their master data management and data quality and data governance efforts, and their analytic efforts, because they just don't know the relative value of these data sources and where to focus. So yeah, so this is one way that I help organizations by helping them measure the various value attributes of their data to help make better decisions and prove the value of data as well.
I was going to say, it's very interesting, because since your book has been out, I'm wondering what you've seen in terms of organizations being able to monetize on their data programs. I mean, how far along, or how much more of a gap is there for organizations to really be mature in this space?
Yeah, I think monetization has been the big impact, of the book and maybe others in the industry who are thinking about data not just as a byproduct, or as something that can be used to generate, pretty pie charts and dashing dashboards, right? But actually as a fuel for business performance. And so I'm not the only one, thinking about this, but a lot of organizations, yes, have set up data monetization programs. We've seen this in the automobile companies and in the insurance industry and in pharmaceuticals that I've worked with, where they've set up actual programs and leaders of data monetization efforts, whose job it is to find new and innovative ways to leverage data assets, not only the company's own data assets, but to look externally at third-party data that might be might prove valuable in certain ways. So yeah, there's definitely a concerted effort in many industries, government as well, to find more opportunities to leverage data. Yeah.
And who are those people in an organization? Are they the chief data officer, or do they have a different role, title?
Yeah, typically led by a chief data officer. Some larger companies have a head of data monetization or something like that, something of that order. Some organizations put the onus on their data science organization, which may or may not be the right way to go about that, but it kind of depends on your culture. Others put the onus on business leaders themselves. But yeah, I think it definitely should be part of the chief data officer's remit to not only figure out how to manage data better, but also how to monetize it or generate more value from it.
So Doug, here's the dilemma though. So it's very widely understood that in the corporate world, the data-driven insights or decisions depend on a sound data and analytic strategy. So that's the best practice. But in practical implementation, we still hear this other statistic that 70% of the data initiatives, data and analytics focused projects fail.
Yeah.
So this huge gap, it's not that this strategy is new that we need to have. It's been
Right.
there, this concept, but why is there such a gap?
Yeah, I think, again, I won't speak to that number itself, but failure is one of those things that's just difficult to put your finger on. I would say one of the reasons perhaps is that they're not measuring the benefits, right, of a data and analytics program. You can create awesome dashboards and great, analytic output, but if people don't use it, then that analytic initiative may be considered a failure. You have a great data warehouse, you've integrated your data, you've cleansed it, you've implemented master data management, you're generating awesome reports that provide tremendous insights, but the business isn't using them. That might be one reason for failure. So I would say, data literacy and culture are probably a big issue for a big reason for data and analytics initiatives failing. Another one is more on the data science side of the equation, and that is a lot of analytic initiatives tend to be experimental, as they should be. Data science efforts are very much an R&D kind of effort, and most R&D projects, fail. But the idea is you should be failing fast and failing often, and then finding some winning ideas. I think organizations can be a little bit more disciplined about identifying potential use cases for data and analytics. And so we've set up a process for doing that for our clients. But I think just at the end of the day, a lot of data and analytics, especially the exploratory and data science kind of stuff, is experimental, and by that nature tends to fail. Right. I'm sure there are other reasons as well, very technical reasons, technology reasons. People run out of money. New players come in. The half-life of a chief data officer is a few years, and so you bring in somebody new, and he or she might kind of retool the whole initiative. So there's a number of reasons for that.
I love how you mentioned the data literacy, data culture. I mean, I think those are all important aspects, right, of how successful, organizations take data seriously. In addition to your Infonomics book, I know another key term that you've coined, and I attribute to you as well in the data management field, is the 3 V's. So volume, velocity, and variety. Again, that's commonly associated with big data. But that was back in 2001. Do you think that in 2020, approaching 2021, those 3 V's still hold true today, or would you add anything new to that?
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. So back in the early 2000s, it was kind of in everybody was thinking about the Y2K issues, right? And people started talking about the challenges of managing data. It occurred to me that it wasn't just the size of data that was an issue for organizations. It was how fast data was coming at them. Certainly as e-commerce started to take off and web browsing and all that, there was a lot of data traveling a lot faster than it was before, and that became a challenge for organizations. But then they started incorporating a lot of different sources of data from inside the organization and outside the organization. So fitting them together and integrating them in a meaningful way became an issue as well. So that's the variety problem. But they're not only challenges, they're also opportunities for organizations. But today, I think we don't really talk about big data so much anymore, because kind of all data is big data, right? And so, but the challenges certainly persist. I think that it's been a lot easier for organizations to solve the volume and velocity problems by scaling infrastructure and dealing with it architecturally. The big problem continues to remain the variety problem, that there are so many different data sources. As I just mentioned with this insurance company, thousands of data sources. How do they manage all of that? How do they get a handle on it? How do they know who's using what and when, and the value that that data provides? Or perhaps in some cases, we've worked with companies where they've determined that certain data sets are underutilized to the point where they should probably just dispose of them and are saving millions of dollars a year in unnecessary costs. So, but there really are no great. Let's just say I think there's an opportunity in the vendor marketplace to deal with the variety challenge better than we have, right?
So you think it's a technology can help solve?
Yeah, I mean, right now you have to throw a bunch of data engineers, at a problem, and architects and data modelers to determine how to integrate a variety of data sources. I'd like to see the day, and I kind of just predicted this, that we're going to see self-organizing data. We're going to see the application of AI and machine learning in the data management world, where data becomes self-organizing based on its potential integration patterns and usage patterns.
Right. On that front, Doug, another thing widely attributed to you, and I've learned a lot, is the types of analytics. Descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And now there is a newer, again, like we have 3 V's got expanded to 4 V's and 5
Right.
V's. And so this 4 analytics now expanded to contextual analytics and whatnot, right? So what are your thoughts on this 4? And by the way, so they're extreme, it's a fantastic framework to think about analytics, the progression of analytics. So what is the progression of analytics in the context of AI ML?
Right. So like the 3 V's, others have added, tried to add other V's just to
Veracity.
be clever or make it their own or whatever. But what's interesting is when folks add other V's like, value or
veracity is
veracity. Yeah, right. So those are not measures of magnitude. So the 3 V's were meant to be measures of magnitude. And there's lots of other V's. And in fact, at Gartner, we came up with 12 V's, right? of viscosity and, other data management challenges that relate to data, but really only those 3 V's of volume, velocity, and variety, deal with magnitude issues and therefore applied to big data. But you talk about on the analytics side, where we developed kind of this model of thinking about how organizations could move more toward higher value analytics. A lot of companies and people are comfortable, again, creating pie charts and bar charts and line charts and maybe doing basic regression analyses. But a lot of that is really just kind of descriptive, what we call descriptive analytics, which looks at what's happening in the business now or what happened in the past. And yes, that can be useful, and particularly it's useful for compliance reporting. But the real high value examples, and I've collected over 500 examples of how organizations are using data and analytics in innovative ways over the years. And actually, my next book I'm working on is going to be a compilation of about 100 or so of my favorite stories. And when I've done a meta analysis of these stories, certain patterns, kind of emerged, right? And what we found is that 95 or greater % of the high value use cases of data and analytics involve diagnostic, predictive, or prescriptive kinds of solutions, not hindsight-oriented analytics and simple pie charts, but diagnosing a problem, understanding fraud, or diagnosing equipment failure, or predicting equipment failure, right? Or prescribing how something should happen in the business in order to optimize things. So that's where the real value proposition is. It's just, as you move up that continuum, the skills and the technologies themselves become more sophisticated,
right?
And arguably a little bit more black box, for business people to appreciate and understand. And so it becomes a little bit scary for some folks as you move into the realm of data science and advanced analytics and scenario planning and data mining and text mining and machine learning and all that. It's the value proposition is there. It's just it's often difficult to express and to achieve a level of comfort among business people. So again, that's where, like Peggy, you mentioned data literacy. Again, that's where data literacy comes in to help business people become more comfortable with these higher forms of analytics.
So Doug, I know you do a lot of consulting with organizations today. Do you see like a gap between organizations that only want to focus on analytics without thinking about their data management program, or do you combine both as part of your holistic consulting data strategy for organizations?
I like to look at it holistically. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be managed separately, but when I've just developed a kind of an upgraded data and analytics maturity model. So there are a lot of data maturity models out there. Right. I felt it important to include analytics as part of a maturity model. So we've rolled out a new data and analytics maturity model that looks at over 200 kind of distinct best practices within an organization. And so, yeah, from that perspective, we have combined it. So we look at how well organizations are actually deploying data as part of their overall data and analytics strategy. But when it comes to managing data and analytics, I think we can certainly do that separately. I've been an advocate, for a long time of separating the IT organization into separate I and T organizations, where we're managing data as a separate entity. And I think that at the end of the day, analytic initiatives can be managed separately from the data itself. But obviously they're tightly coupled.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard today and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite player like iTunes and Spotify. And please do rate our podcast. Also, please go to our website, www.datatransformerspodcast.com, for more episodes, blogs, and information on our speakers. Thank you.